Good day, folks. Oop, that's why. How's everybody doing?
Doing well.
So is that a green screen or is that a green background for your green screen? As he
It just takes a second to do the color adjustment. It looks like in Zoom some days.
The man behind the curtain is exposed.
I mean, yeah.
Pull your book out.
Curtain. Yeah.
That's great.
Hey, good morning, guys.
Hi, everyone.
Hey, folks. Hank, we have a question for you. It's very important. And you need your mic.
Yeah, shoot.
How do you pronounce Q-U-A-Y?
Quay.
Is that the official?
Yeah, that's the official pronunciation.
Okay. So there's nobody from Australia in your group?
No, I mean, we're the
Your
original
mic-
founder left. Oh, am I really quiet?
Now you're good. It was dropping out, like it was switching to a different mic.
The original founder left. I guess like 6 months ago now. But last year he wanted to do an April Fool's joke where it added changed the logo to add like a little pronunciation guide that automatically detected what region you were from and put the wrong one in.
We had somebody on one of these calls and he was insistent to call it Chi. Brandon, were you on that call? I can't remember. I don't know what the Australian pronunciation would be, but it was funny. So I promised I would check with you on what the official pronunciation was. Wait, oh, there he is. Yeah, still there.
As a Brit, it's definitely key.
K, that's what it was. It was K. So, all right, we got Malind.
Do we
Lynn,
have
is Niels going to make it
enough
today?
quorum to start? He's supposed to join. I think we need not wait for him.
Okay. And Justin was planning on attending, and he mentioned this morning he may not be able to make it. So,
Yeah.
the floor is yours.
Yeah, I think we can get started. So I put an agenda item in the meeting notes. We have been working on this revocation requirement for a while, and we have a doc ready for review. I have put in the link in the chat. It's also there in the meeting notes. It's a, I think it's a comparatively denser topic than what we have discussed before. I've tried to cover most of it in the doc for various types of audiences. And I think we also need good enough time to have a debate around it. So yeah, just waiting for everybody to read through the whole doc, and then we can talk about it. I don't see any other item in the agenda yet, but
I'm sure this one's meaty. Will take up the time.
but
I'm a little late. Have we started?
Yeah, Ralph, we're doing the read of the doc. Which do you? I think I forget the. Who are we on Zoom? Zoom doesn't show you the history, does it?
Nope.
Okay.
For which we thank it,
Okay.
actually.
yeah. I
Oh,
think
thanks
that
you.
is-
I appreciate
Thanks
it.
a lot.
Great.
Should we budget for 25 after the hour?
I think we could go on till 8:30. People need more time.
Fair enough.
I need to rejoin because the screen share requires a permission change. I'll rejoin in a minute. Is everyone able to see my screen?
Yep.
Alright. Shall we get started? Okay. Let me open this.
Yeah, I don't know if Marina wants to chime in
I-
on this one, but I know we had done a lot of work on key revocation before in this PR. And so I was wondering if we were abandoning that in favor of this work and this markdown or not.
I have a similar question.
I don't have a clear answer here. I wasn't aware of that particular work, but I can go through it and see where they differ or where the commonalities are. At a high level, is what's proposed in that PR. Like, are there similarities or they are in
So
different directions?
the other one didn't really, I think we vetted it down to avoid recommending a specific answer. And so we just proposed, here are the, I think, 3 or 4 major options that you had. And we've gone down in this proposal and said, here is the option that we want to recommend.
Got
And we
it.
didn't do that in the other one.
Got it. Okay.
And I
I'll
think
go through that.
There's some other options, I think, in the other one that aren't listed here as well.
Sure. Okay, I'm gonna skip this one. Basically because we got another 25 minutes left. I want to get to the meat of the discussion. Gonna skip this one. I agree. I'll add that. I can change that. I think it's more commonly used in the circles that I have been, but I can change that. I recognize that, like, that the terminology may not be widely used.
I mean, if there's a different term,
Um,
it just, I liked where you were going with it, but it threw my head off, and I didn't know if it was just me that didn't
No, sure.
recognize that terminology.
No, I agree. It's not very widely used. I think in Amazon or in certain circles it is in wide use, but we want the documents to be as accessible to users as possible. I think here I'm just trying to summarize. I think maybe this section was more skewed towards why we don't want customers to fail closed or block execution on deployment. That's mainly on based on our experiences and what we have heard from customers. But I think in the end, like, do we agree that it's up to the deployers based on their specific needs that they should be able to configure? I think in the scenarios where we have heard from customers, it's mainly outages, like the side effect has been outages, and like maybe in some other kind of workloads, you may be okay with your software stopping and that's acceptable for you. But for online services, this causes like abrupt outages, and being able to kind of jump on it and figure out what went wrong and react to it is really difficult for customers.
I think that the challenge is that it's really hard to distinguish between a network outage and some kind of attacker denial of service attack. That's just a hard problem. It's probably not going to solve it today, but.
Sure. I think rather than even in the case where the revocation signals were reliable, whether you really got affected, like a vulnerability came out, publisher decides to take it off, you may not be affected based on the specific details of that vulnerability. And it's still your choice to evaluate and decide whether you want to continue or not.
I think this all kind of
Yeah.
falls into the best practices that we're trying to convey in all of this, and why we're enabling this is you shouldn't be dependent on external content for any kind of production environment. So inside of your environment, you have a reliable connection to the registry, and upstream stuff that changes, you want to be aware of it. You might even configure it to be automatic, but you don't want it to be by default automatic, because that does, in many cases, a security change or something that might be there is less problematic than the service being not running. It could be like there's been several cases of this where companies literally go out of business because their billing systems or whatever it is was taken down because of a fix. So I think the idea here is we're trying to provide the right notification, and the deployer or the consumer can configure how they want the behavior to react.
I'll throw out the other risk of failing open is that it's not clear, and it kind of goes to a comment much later down, but it's not clear to the users necessarily if you're failing open or if you've got a successfully properly configured environment. And so they may think that everything is configured properly and running as expected, and not realize that their deployments have just been failing open. It just looks like it's working.
Yep, that's an issue. The other one I noticed is that the discussion where the comments are right now is also predicated on the scenarios 1 and 2. That is, we're assuming fail open and fail close is about a revocation due to a compromise. And yet 3 and 4 are not about compromises. They are about package changes. And package changes are not a case in which fail closed would ever be a default, because you would want to be notified that the package was changing. You would want to go and test whatever that test might, be comprised of, and deploy the new thing in a coherent way, as opposed to take some operational action based on a notification that a package changed. So those are slightly different impact scenarios based on the way that I read the descriptions. Whereas fail open, fail closed is language that seems to imply that we're discussing a compromise of some sort. So there's a slight distinction.
Well, then it sounds like what you're more interested in is a good dependency. I mean, you shouldn't have to revoke an image because there's an updated packaging that the other package you're using, the other image you're using depends on. That should just be done through proper dependency management.
Right, agreed. And yet scenarios 3 and 4 don't clearly, to me, describe what the reason for the revocation is, whereas the 1 and 2 describe what the reason for the revocation is.
Okay.
So 3 and 4 seem to be optional. That
I
is,
can
somebody just
clarify.
decided. Does that make sense?
Yeah, I can clarify.
Yeah.
The cross-registry usage and the air gap network, those scenarios are assuming that it's till 1 and 2 that caused the revocation. I can clarify it there. It wasn't intended to be packet changes. And the way I'm looking at dependencies with what we are proposing currently is the signatures are on images. We are not doing layer level signatures yet. I think it's a conversation when that comes in. But the primary scenarios are you take a third party image as is, configure it using environment variables or some other mechanisms and run it as is.
Mhm.
Or you take a third party image, use it as a layer, build on top of it, re-sign it, and then use it. Where
In general,
the signature
Mhm.
signature will change, and probably the more, I don't know which is the more common of these use cases.
Sure. Okay. So my comments in those on 3 and 4 are basically about my misreading of what you were understanding there. So you can address those in the way that you see
Yeah,
fit.
I can update that. I can
Yep,
make
no
it more
problem.
clearer there.
Thank you.
Real
Shall
quick, I
we-
want to throw out a third
Sure.
option here because we're just saying we're going to fail open or we're going to fail closed. And I'm wondering if it might make sense as a third option of you fail with some kind of delay in there where it's you have some kind of expiration where you know that you should trust this thing for a week and you're going to refresh this thing after 4 days. And so you have that 3-day time frame in there where something could fail, but you're still going to be working because you have that week time frame in there. And
Wouldn't you
so,
think a deployer would handle that on their own? So they get, so like the scenario I would think would be a deployer would sit there and say, okay, I've just received a notification. My default is to fail open, but my notification I've got wired up into my deployment system that is now set a timer for 1 week. And I now control that time period within which.
yeah,
Or would
I'm
you
thinking
think
the
that
notification would
offering it?
be, I think the notification would be, hey, you're getting alerted because this thing shouldn't be down to that 3-day expiration window. So something hasn't triggered at that point,
Okay.
when you're within 3 days of that expiration. But the actual things using these artifacts are still saying, I'm still good, I'm still up, I'm still running. And so
I
you
see what
know
you're
that
saying.
maybe
Okay.
there's an attack, but things are still working.
I think part of this is the thing we continue to struggle with is the separation of concerns, right? It's what we're not making any attestation to what comes into a registry. We pick it up from the point of the build to hands over, and we'll make sure that it gets all the way through. We'll make sure that the signature has some integrity to it. I think part of what you're getting to hear, the policy is what security scanners will do and what customers will configure as the policy in that particular environment. So what you're saying is that quarantine window, or that window which they're allowing, and it might only allow for existing nodes, right? Like you might block a new deployment of that artifact, in this by an image in this case, but whatever. But existing ones that scale, you might have to allow those to run. So I think it's more of the security scanner plays a big role in that and other configurations. We're just trying to provide the core data on the integrity of the signature for what was originally blessed, and SBOMs and all these other things will play other parts to that decision criteria.
I think that's an interesting model, Brandon, what you're referring to. I think you're saying being able to say revocation checks, whether due to availability or actual revocation check, don't fail immediately. Is that what you mean? And then provide a user or deployer should be able to provide a delay. So start with
So-
warn and fail at a limit.
So from the deployer side, well, no, from the signer side, you would consider it a failure from your signer side if things ever got down to less than 3 days of that window. And so there's something broken, you need to fix, you need to get it working. But from the deployer side, they know they have all the way until that 7-day expiration because that's what the signer originally specified. And so by having 2 different deadlines, depending on if you're monitoring your signatures or if you're verifying the signatures, we have that point where it's still a hard cutoff. If you pull something past the 7 days, it's broken, it's down, you got to fix it. but we have this soft window in between there where we're not hard closed, hard failed. We still have the option that something could still succeed.
Are you talking
Should the
about signature
signer make a
expiry?
decision on policy on what, like, should the author of the content be determining the policy for how long something should be allowed to run, or is that really the consumer's configuration and the consumer's configuration for a particular environment?
It would be the author and what I'm saying, but the author could potentially be the consumer when they ingest that from upstream and then re-sign it themselves.
Yeah, there's
If you
always
could put in
consumers the same, sure, but
Brandon, if you could put in a note in the meeting notes,
Yeah.
I'd be happy to explore that option. Is there anything more that we want to talk about here? I want to make sure we do at least one pass of all the important comments. I'm gonna move to the next sections. Yeah, agreed. I think there was some good details here. Yeah, I didn't get why we need both. I think I had a similar question elsewhere around allow less, as in compared to Notary V1, we're doing signatures per artifact, so you're able to independently verify each artifact. What does the allow list add on top of it?
Well, what the allow list gives you is a set of what's currently available. So what it does is exactly what this document is talking about. It does the rescinding. It prevents things like mix and match or rollback, where, because if something is signed once, that signature looks valid even after you've uploaded something else and signed that. So if an attacker were to block the second one and just show you the first one, you wouldn't know that unless you had some kind of collection of, like, time-stamped collection of these are the current things that are valid. And so anything that's on this list, I'd be able to trust. Yeah.
Okay, so mainly provides a revocation control. Okay.
Yeah, revocation as well as things like mix and match, which is kind of a subset of revocation.
Yeah, like for example, if you're deploying a pod with multiple containers, and if they were all valid together, maybe.
Yeah, like you wouldn't, if you have two containers that interact with each other, maybe you need to be sure that there's certain software in each one or something like that. Exactly. I think I didn't get Ralph's comment.
So let's see, which one is this? This is for blast radius control. It's the comment.
So no, sir, no, it's the wrong.
Which one is it for?
I'll scroll down. It's this one. The artifact themselves need not be signed. Around signed allow less.
Okay, so my reply is to the comment that was attached to that, which is a general allow less signature more permissive than a specific developer with a specific signing key in an artifact. I think you would still want both. My general comment is the way I'm reading the main proposals here is that the trust we're attempting to establish is largely going to be consumed by the publisher, the last publisher of the artifact. And that will, in a large degree of cases, be some sort of organization. So you can think of Amazon or Google or, VMware or whatever it might be to their vendors, their customers.
Yeah, I think I used the word developer maybe a little bit too broadly in my comment.
Yeah,
there.
so all of this would, that was actually my reaction, was basically when we use the word developer, developers are going to want a whole set of things, especially in the open source world, and individual developers and very small companies that don't really have established trust with customers. So a developer signature has different semantic meaning than a organizational publisher signature. And I don't mean that at a technical level. I mean that as a human relationship level. And so
Yeah,
when we
and-
use the word like specific developer with specific, I get real thrown because I think there are a whole bunch more things that developers might need.
Yeah, I think my thought here is that like within
Mhm.
that the publisher would then publish, would then sign it with their signature because the developer trusts it. And they said, this is the final software, you should then
Gotcha.
publish it. But I see where the
I'm-
confusion is. So that's,
I'm all in. I'm all in. By the way, my camera's over here, but everything's on a big screen over here. So forgive me for
Okay,
earring it, but that's it exactly. You've got it.
okay, I'm going to the next one. I think it's overhead. It's overhead per update. So if a repository owner is pushing artifacts frequently, they need to update. I think the
Just on the
challenges are
update
more
semantics.
around I think the challenges are more around the update semantic, and to store this within the repository itself and to be able to update it. I think the underlying capabilities are currently not there in registry spec and will need to be added if we
yeah, I
want to
think
go
that
this route.
the update problem is definitely a real issue. I think that the size issue, I have a spreadsheet somewhere, and unless it's a huge number of artifacts on a registry, the size isn't huge, but I do understand the update concern. So I can
So
find
the
that spreadsheet.
replay, okay,
I mean,
cool.
if it was
Yeah, if you can
individual
add it to
data
it.
elements, then we can get a stream, and you get the collection like a database kind of thing, like a logging kind of thing. That's one thing. And I think later on the document moves on to some better recommendations anyway. But I wanted to capture that piece, and it's not to say that we couldn't make that change. Like we are going to be pursuing a metadata service as a component of distribution in hopefully the near future. But or a proposal around one. But that's even further out than this stuff.
I think the replay or stale deny list basically means that the signed deny list needs to have a expiry, needs to be frequently re-signed. I think those are the solutions that address it.
Yeah, and I think that kind of undoes a lot of that pro. If you're saying that we need to keep refreshing it, then it is going to be frequently updated.
Yeah. So the pros and cons were combined. So these are like combined pros and cons for CRL and OCSP. This is addressed later. Yeah, I think this is not a single trusted authority, like as in you're going to single endpoint per certificate. So if you had a chain, they might be multiple endpoints. And yes, this is an external source, which was one of the concerns with the NV1, that some metadata is outside of the registry. But I think the difference here is we are relying on existing mechanisms and infrastructures. And in many cases, these are not overheads for the customers. If I get a public CA issued certificate, CRL or CSP is already provided by them. Or they can be value adds by cloud service providers where customers themselves don't have to set up, re-sign CRLs, keep them periodically up to date, or manage the process of revocation. I think that's where we see the advantage.
I just really like to see better defined what the trust model is and who would be running different things signed by who. Because I feel like those details are going to be important to figure out and make sure that we're doing this all in a way that actually follows who and what people are trusting, instead of just saying, this is the policy, so we're doing it.
So the trust model, if you can define that more, like what things need to be defined, what information you're looking for in the trust model, that'll help me.
Yeah, because I don't understand who would be running these servers. I guess that's my big question. And then how would someone know who should be running them?
Sure. So there are two main categories. If you want to distribute artifacts that are publicly trusted, so say Microsoft distributing a SQL image, you get a publicly trusted code signing certificate from a public CA. You automatically get CRL or CSP capabilities from them.
But how? Like, how do you know it's trusted?
Because you're relying on, say, DigiCert or any of the known routes.
Okay, so
which will-
we're chaining off of the certificate authorities used for the internet to then sign these things used for.
Yes, if you
registry.
want it to be publicly trusted, that is the route you can go.
Okay.
If you want
And I
it
just
for
don't know-
internal consumption, it can be your own organizational PKI, or can be even as simple as self-signed certificates.
I just don't know if the existing CAs are really set up to do this kind of volume of certificates for every different public registry that is out there.
So all of the browser-based checks currently, or any CRL verification that occurs on OSS, they rely on CRLs and OCSPs. These endpoints do receive a large volume of requests. They are supposed to be highly available, but they can have blips, and that is that is one of the reasons you don't want to have a fail close, because you may have availability problems that can cause your software to shut down. I think overall we recognize. I'll try to summarize. I think that CRL OCSP is an existing mechanism that solves the distribution problem, that is defined process around how you do revocation. It's well understood. Even the gaps and sharp edges are well understood. And from a deployer's perspective, I think most deployers, the way they want to configure it is you don't want revocation checks to run on your host every time when you do run. You want it to run asynchronously somewhere else, either in a Kubernetes controller or some other component that does periodic checks and notifies you. And then you take action based on that. I think that's kind of the base scenario we're trying to satisfy, and CRL OCSP does fit in there, even though it is not perfect in all the cases.
I mean, that makes sense. I just worry about like co-opting somebody else's root of trust for a new system, because I feel like that doesn't really, I don't know if it makes sense from a trust perspective.
So
Or
I'm
at
going
least
to jump in.
Oh, go ahead, Brandon.
I'm going to jump in just because of a time check. I know we're
Sure.
like 1 minute to the end of this meeting. And so I wanted to say, I think we're probably going to revisit this next week, as long as everybody is still available for that. Are there any big things other than just the rest of the bullet points in this document that we want to address, that we want to get included in this next week, that we want to?
Yeah, any other topics that are missing or large gaps that you see?
Yeah, the big one to me is that we made a big jump in assumption of saying we're going to go closed versus open. We failed open versus failing closed. So
sorry,
I'm not sure that I'm ready for myself. I'm not sure I'm ready to say that is a foregone conclusion. And I think it might be worth us just kind of revisiting Marina's document and saying, is this really the direction we want to go? Or do we want to look at the other options out there and just make sure that we're all on board with that decision before we just make that assumed?
Sure. Yeah, we can revisit that particular decision. I want to reiterate for clarification. What we are saying is the framework will not define or prescribe a particular or implement a particular model. It's up to the deployer to configure how they want to fail when revocation checks fail.
This may just be what's the default, I think, is the question, because that like a safer default where maybe you do fail is the right thing. Because look, we think one of the things I've realized in the last couple of weeks of having the various conversations, especially with new folks coming in, is the shift of what was done with Notary V1 and Docker Content Trust with what we're doing here. This is much more of a decentralized model to allow content flow, and the assumption that we don't make production run dependencies on external sources. So Marina, in your case, like even if the public CAs are not reliable enough, I'm not weighing in one way or another, like we, even in Microsoft, even on Azure rather, we tell customers, don't depend on your content directly from MCR in production. Bring that into your environment, because we will update the stuff in MCR, and it may not be the update you need. It may be you need, but you can't do it right then, right? There's that problem. So it's not just reliability, it's even when it's reliable, the content, the secure update might actually break you. So there's that decoupling But my point is that we know that decoupling is hard, and that's kind of up to all of us as the community to kind of make that tooling better, but we also know that that's not there yet. So having some secure defaults, secured by default model, might not be the most reliable for production, but it might be the safest to start. That's a good thing. And then customers can kind of users can opt into how they tweak that for their environment, and shift from being dependent on public. Like, we know the first thing people do is Docker run something from Docker Hub. You know, they need to set it up as a different model so it's in a registry that they control. So
it might be helpful having up top a list of infrastructure we're expecting to need to maintain for a solution that implements this.
I was thinking adding to that scenario section, because we have some of the pictures and we talk about it, but I don't think it hasn't been as obvious to talk about what is the expectation of this. Not that you could move content across, is actually you should move content across, and some of our design principles are based on this assumption. So I think some more clarity in there.
Yeah.
Quick couple of things. Sorry, go on, Brandon.
I was going to say infrastructure to maintain, I was being more specific on air-gapped environments that can't rely on external solutions. So what would they need to set up to be able to implement this?
Could you add that to the meeting notes? I think just a general comment, if like for the next version of this document, wherever you feel that large gaps or sections that need clarification, just add a note in the meetings, in the meetings notes or in here, and I'll address that. Wanted to touch upon the artifact level revocation, because this is a new thing that we are kind of introducing, or at least the recommendation is like a new lightweight spec that anybody can implement if they are interested in artifact level revocation. I didn't see many comments here. Other than this, I agree. I'll update this part. Were there any other observations or comments here? I think we do agree that artifact level revocation is important, and we don't want just key level or certificate level controls. All right. Let's see.
I guess something just, I like the idea that we're reading and so forth, and it's difficult to assume people are going to have read before, especially when we don't post the documents to the night before, and we all have been guilty of this. Is this model work for people where we literally take the first half of the meeting and read, or should we put more onus on ourselves to commit to getting the documents we were pros to read 24 to 48 hours before, and we block time before the meeting? This way we can do it on our own time. Obviously, I sound like I have an opinion. I do. I feel like we took half the meeting just for us to read when we can do it on our own time.
Yeah, I think that we usually have a lot of discussion stuff, so it'd be nice to have more time for that for sure.
Agreed.
Okay, so the discipline's on the people producing content to have it done at least 24, hopefully 48, and let people know. We'll make sure the agenda. That's why I've been pushing to have the agenda updated early, so people know what they should even bother attending and what is the content they should read before the meeting. So we'll work on that. And then there's another conversation we've been having is when can we transition from hack docs into PRs so we can comment there in a normal fashion, normal or different or whatever you want to call it.
Yeah,
Is there an email that is going out ahead of time for these meetings, or is it just on everyone's like responsibility to check the HackMD?
No, we don't expect people to. Did somebody call? Did somebody call? We do put the information on the Slack channel. The Notary V2 Slack channel is our main form of communication.
Cool.
The CNCF calendar has us on the calendar, but the agenda is on the Hack Doc, and the notification of what's going on happens on Slack. So,
okay.
Steps pieces.
I think the current model, at least what I'm following, and I agree, the content is being produced, or we are sending out these notifications pretty late, is we are having like a first draft in Hack Doc, and if there is broad consensus, we can make a pull request and continue our debates there. Does that model work, or we want to start with pull requests directly?
I don't think that part matters so much. I know there's also just a lot of open pull requests and a lot of open discussion. It'd be nice just to kind of figure out how to come to consensus and get things merged. More generally, kind of however we get there. I don't care too much.
Cool. Let's see. I skipped around a bit.
Well, then we should just be sensitive to people's times to get onto it.
That sounds good. We can continue on this next week, and like I said, if there were specific areas that you would like to see added in here, or things that I'm missing, that just mention that in the meeting notes or comments. I'll make a pass through both of them later. Thanks everyone for your time.
Thanks, folks.
Thanks. Bye.